We are into the heavy end of foundation equipment. This model is made by Bymo and it's the Bauer MC96 crane with the BC35 HDS-T diaphragm wall cutter. Included with the model is an instruction book and we'll look at that shortly. And inside the picture sleeve we have 2 sets of expanded polystyrene trays. And the first good thing to know is that the top side is helpfully marked. The trays are factory sealed and some intricate knife work is needed to be able to separate the top from the bottom. And the first box that we look into has the diaphragm walling equipment. Lifting the lid on the second box and we see the MC96 crane and all of its parts. So there's a fair bit of assembly to do and there's an instruction manual included which starts off with a list of parts. Then there is a page and that's printed in German, and that's followed by a page which is printed in English. Then you have more pages which are printed in pictures. The manual covers the diaphragm walling configuration, but doesn't describe how to build the crane on its own. So we'll start by building the diaphragm walling configuration and we need to put together the boom. That consists of a couple of lattice sections and a heavy boom head. The parts are joined using tiny black nuts and bolts. And 2 tools are provided which makes it easier to join the nuts and bolts together. Here we are with the boom assembled and we need to attach the guides for the hoses. These are plastic and they attach using stiff spring clips. And the only thing to watch out for when you're attaching the biggest guide is that the spring clips are the right way round because the biggest part of the clip goes onto the boom. On the review model they were attached the wrong way round on the guide frame. But in reality it's no problem to detach them and put them on the right way round. So here with the spring clips attached to the boom, we then attach the guide onto the top of the spring clips. And as you can see it's all a tight fit. After that the big frame attaches by 2 more spring clips. The next job is to add in 2 fallback prevention cylinders. But before you pin that in place you have to add the hose rolling system. This is a large part and it's a little bit fiddly to get in place. And what you have to do is to drop it in and line up the holes that are in it with the holes in the fallback prevention cylinders. That is a lot of explanation, but it's easier to see once the parts are all lined up because there's a pin that goes in on each side and you push that in to secure all the pieces. The next job is to get some rope off of the winch drums, and to do that you remove a metal panel which gives access to the winches. Inside there are a couple of plastic keys which are clipped in, and you insert those into the winches that you want to operate. To begin with, we'll pull off some rope for the luffing mechanism. You have to reeve it up, which is fairly easy to do, and then tie off the rope and snip off the loose end. Next we'll add in the other parts of the fallback prevention cylinders, and they consist of springs and pistons. Then we can lift up the boom and make the pendant connections. These are joined with connectors which go through the eyes of the wire pendants. It's a bit fiddly, as is doing up the nuts and bolts. With the boom up we run ropes off each of the main winch drums, and these get tied on to the big cutter frame. You have to join the ropes with a knot, and then for display try and hide the knot from view inside the cutter. Now we can sort out the big hoses, and the first is the run of hydraulic hoses, and this runs over the large wheel at the top. And there's a place on the drum where you can clip the loose end. Once it's secured you can turn the drum and wind on all of the loose hose. One very good aspect of the model is that the hoses are nice and soft, so they do maintain a realistic profile. There's also enough space on the drum to hold all of the hose. You then repeat the process with the large conveying hose, and that has also got a faultful connection on the big drum. Once it's pressed in place you can then slowly rotate the drum and wind on all of the loose hose. In some respects this part of the model is a real wind-up. With the main assembly done we move on to adding some more of the detailed parts, and we'll start that off with a large walkway assembly on the cab side. This is a bit tricky to get into position, but once it's in it stays in. and then we can add on a plastic ladder frame which just hooks over. On the other side of the machine we need to sort out the hose connections, and they are fixed to a plate which presses in to the front of the crane body. That's another good fitting piece which stays in place once you press it in. After that, to complete the assembly, we repeat what we've already seen on the walkways and ladders. Looking underneath, the metal tracks are nicely detailed with bolt head details, and there is some detail in other places, including underneath the crane body. One small disappointment is that the pulleys of the luffing gear are solid blocks rather than individual sheaves. But fortunately all of the other detailing is really good, and that includes the track frames, and they include walkway steps. The cab of the MC96 is plastic, but it is detailed. And the standard is high elsewhere, with the metal walkway having a textured surface. And the detailing of the body sides is excellent, with panel handles and hinges all detailed. There are more textured surfaces on the top. The rear counterweight is a nicely decorated solid block, and the lifting mechanism has rope reeving. One of the nicest parts is the hose rolling system, and detailing of the drum drives is really good. And that's also repeated looking on the outside. The connection of the hoses into the crane body is another area of high detail, and the lattice boom sections have a fine mesh walkway. The pendants and their connections also look very realistic. At the top of the special boom heads, the parts are impressive with big metal wheels. The cutter is made of a combination of metal and plastic parts, but the colour match is very good, so it's hard to tell the difference. The excellent detailing continues to the bottom, and there you find the cutter wheels, which are complex and made of plastic. Out of the box, the counterweight is attached to the crane, but it's easy to slide off and remove it. The other thing you also need to do when you start rigging the crane is to extend the tracks, but if you want, the crane can be displayed as a load, with the only downside being that the steps stick out too much and maybe the exhaust pipe is a bit high. The tracks are easy to roll by hand, and the tension is maintained by spring-loaded idlers. If the crane is upside down and you want to shelter from the rain, you can extend the tracks and stand underneath. Rotating the crane is nice and smooth, and it's always good when there's no stickiness or rocking of the crane. You can raise and lower the cutter on the winches, and instead of twiddling your thumbs, you can always turn the cutter wheels. And if those wheels are a little bit too small for you, you could always have fun turning the big hose drums. The cutter head also has the ability to be angled, rather than just face onto the crane. And talking about the crane, the parts are included to be able to rig the MC96 as a lift crane. And here you see we've assembled the lattice boom and pendants. As if by magic, the model is now rigged as a crane, and you can see that there are additional handrails that we can insert on the top. And the model also comes with 3 additional counterweights on each side. These are a bit fiddly to place and they're easily knocked off, so you need to be careful with them. Looking at the crane boom head, it's nicely formed, and there's a large hook block which has 2 sheaves. This is a really good looking model of a complex Bauer foundation machine. Bymo has made a good job of it, and the quality is improved compared to previous Bauer models. It is both detailed and has good functionality, and overall it certainly is impressive, and all things considered, it is excellent.